Do you know why the quietest person in the room often terrifies everyone else? Because power isn't loud. It's the silence you can't decode, the calm that feels like a storm is coming. And the moment they can't predict you, they begin to fear you. Niccolò Machiavelli saw this centuries ago, and it remains as brutal a truth now as it was in Renaissance Florence. People say they want kindness, transparency, and honesty. But watch closely. They respect silence more than chatter, restraint more than openness, fear more than affection. And the few who understand this rule the rest. Before we begin, subscribe to Ruthless Psychology and join a community that dares to uncover what others hide. The cold, uncomfortable rules that govern power, control, and human survival. Because this is not a channel for dreamers. This is for those who want to master the game before it masters them. Now let's strip away the illusions. The world isn't ruled by the loudest voice or the brightest smile. The world is ruled by the man who can sit in silence while others unravel, by the woman who refuses to react when everyone else is triggered, by the person who withholds their hand just long enough to make others sweat. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is domination. This is the first Machiavellian truth. Your silence is sharper than any blade. Think about it. When you stop reacting, you force others to reveal themselves. They fill the silence with their insecurities, their excuses, their confessions. The less you reveal, the more they imagine, and imagination magnifies everything. In that void, you grow larger, darker, and more dangerous in their minds. History proves it. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, was feared not for endless speeches, but for his restraint. He ruled by holding his tongue, forcing others to confront their own chaos, while he stood calm. In our time, think of negotiators who sit quietly as the other side talks themselves into concessions. Or the CEO who says nothing in a heated boardroom until everyone is begging for direction. Their silence carries more weight than 1,000 words. Why? Because silence unsettles. Most people are addicted to reaction. They crave reassurance. They need approval. They demand explanation. When you give them nothing, they squirm. And in that squirming, they reveal everything. The second Machiavellian truth follows directly. Predictability is death. If people can map your reactions, they can control you. If they know which words trigger your anger, which compliments win your loyalty, which accusations make you defensive, they own you. Predictability is the blueprint of the weak. The predictable man is a puppet, his strings visible to everyone. But the unpredictable man? He is an enigma. He inspires caution. He provokes hesitation. He terrifies people not with what he does, but with what they cannot anticipate. This is why Machiavelli declared, "It is better to be feared than loved. If you cannot be both, love fades, admiration dies. But the fear of the unknown, that never leaves. The man who is unreadable, who cannot be cornered, who is both fox and lion, is the man no one dares to underestimate." Now comes the third truth, perhaps the darkest of all. Projection is power. Human beings cannot stand uncertainty. When you withhold explanations, when you don't reveal your intentions, when you give them silence instead of answers, they project. They accuse you of arrogance, cruelty, untrustworthiness. They invent stories about you not because of what you are, but because of what they fear you might be. And that is the beauty of projection. Their fear becomes your power. By refusing to explain yourself, you let their imagination work in your favor. You become larger in their mind, scarier in their thoughts, more dominant in their presence. You force them to bend to a game they don't even realize they're playing. Think about your own life. How many times have you rushed to explain yourself because you feared being misunderstood? How many times have you defended a decision when silence would have made you stronger? Every explanation was a surrender. Every apology, unless strategically placed, was a crack in your armor. But the man who reveals nothing he does not choose to reveal, who speaks rarely and watches always, that man is dangerous. That man shapes the battlefield by doing nothing at all. This is the opening trinity of Machiavellian power. Silence is control. Unpredictability is security. Projection is domination. And if you master just these three, you already place yourself above most of the world. But here's where the knife cuts deeper. Whoever controls your emotions controls you. If they can trigger your rage, they own you. If they can make you guilty, they own you. If they can tempt you with praise, they own you. You must learn to cut these strings. You must master your inner landscape so completely that no one else can navigate it better than you. That is the price of freedom. And that is the beginning of fear. So let me leave you with this challenge before we move forward. Stop reacting. Stop explaining. Stop apologizing. The next time silence presses down on you, endure it. The next time they beg for your response, deny it. Watch as their discomfort grows and know that in that moment, power has shifted into your hands. Do you think Machiavelli was right, or was he too ruthless? Leave your thoughts below. Human beings crave certainty the way addicts crave a fix. They want to know where you stand, what you'll do, how you'll react. That craving is your weapon. Because when you deny them certainty, they project their fears, their insecurities, their suspicions, and without realizing it, they hand you their power. This is the mirror effect. By refusing to explain yourself, you become a mirror that reflects their inner chaos. They accuse you of arrogance, cruelty, manipulation, yet all they're really describing is their own fear of losing control. And here's the brilliance. You didn't even have to lift a finger. They did all the work for you. Machiavelli would smile at this. Why waste energy when people will reveal themselves in their desperation for reassurance? The wise ruler, the cunning leader, the dangerous man, he lets others confess by their own discomfort. Now think about relationships. How many times has someone accused you of being distant? Were you truly distant, or were you simply refusing to provide the emotional comfort they demanded? Most people don't want truth. They want comfort. And when you refuse to give it, they panic. Their panic exposes their dependence on your approval. That's when you know you hold the upper hand. But silence and unpredictability are not enough. You must also master selective vulnerability. Raw openness is not authenticity, it's weakness. If you bleed in front of everyone, don't be surprised when someone uses the blood to track you. The modern world lies to you about this. It preaches, share everything, be transparent, open up. That is a trap, because what you reveal without caution will be weaponized against you. The Machiavellian path is not to lock yourself into stone. It is to choose vulnerability strategically. You reveal anger only when it strengthens your position. You offer empathy only when it binds others to you. You share your weakness only when it builds loyalty instead of eroding respect. Selective vulnerability is not deception, it's survival. Consider Alexander the Great. He once wept in front of his army, not because he lost control, but because it forged loyalty. His tears were not carelessness, they were calculated. He knew that showing pain at the right moment could inspire devotion. But had he wept at every difficulty, he would have been despised. That is the art of selective revelation, turning what appears as weakness into a weapon of strength. Now let's confront one of the most dangerous levers ever invented: guilt. Guilt is the leash society uses to keep you compliant. You say yes when you want to say no. You apologize when you've done nothing wrong. You explain yourself endlessly just to avoid being misunderstood. That's not kindness, that's submission. The manipulator doesn't need chains, they only need disappointment. A sigh, a frown, a single look that says, "I expected better from you," and like a trained animal, you rush to correct yourself. That is the leash of guilt tightening around your neck. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. Princes used guilt as a weapon to keep subjects obedient without spilling blood. Today, it's used by bosses, lovers, parents, friends, not through swords, but through sighs. And the leash is just as strong. Here's your challenge. The next time you feel guilt burning inside you, don't move, don't explain, don't apologize. Sit with it, endure it, let the leash snap. Because until you can endure guilt without caving, you are still owned. Understand this: the man who cannot bear guilt is not moral. He is obedient. And obedience is not a virtue when it serves the undeserving. Do you see the pattern yet? Silence unsettles. Unpredictability terrifies. Selective vulnerability manipulates. Guilt enslaves. If you master the first three and resist the fourth, you step onto the Machiavellian path of freedom. You stop being a puppet. You stop being predictable. You stop being manageable. But here is where the knife goes deeper. Even if you learn silence, unpredictability, and restraint, the world will still try to trap you with its sweetest poison, flattery. Flattery is the most seductive leash of all. And if you don't learn how to resist it, everything else you've built will collapse. We'll dig into that next. So here's my question for you. When someone praises you, your generosity, your loyalty, your patience, do you smile and believe them? Or do you recognize the hidden chain they're trying to wrap around your neck? Think carefully, because in the game of power, the compliments you crave may be the very weapon that destroys you. Flattery, the most beautiful weapon ever forged. It doesn't strike like a sword. It doesn't burn like fire. It slips quietly into your ears, convincing you it's a gift, when in truth, it's a leash. They will tell you how generous you are, how loyal, how patient, not because they value these traits, but because they want you to keep giving them. Flattery is never about you. It's about the manipulator who needs your obedience. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. He warned rulers that flattery was one of the greatest dangers to their reign. Why? Because flattery blinds. A prince who surrounds himself with flatterers becomes deaf to truth, blind to danger, and vulnerable to collapse. But Machiavelli also gave the cure. Listen carefully, but believe rarely. Accept praise with politeness, but treat it as smoke. If you inhale it too deeply, it will suffocate you. Now let me ask you, how many times have you worked twice as hard because someone praised you? How many times have you bent over backwards just to keep hearing the same sweet words? That is the trap. The moment you need praise, you are theirs. So what's the Machiavellian move? Simple. Accept flattery as you would accept a glass of water. Nod, smile, say thank you, but let it pass through you like wind through an open hall. You acknowledge it, but you don't depend on it, because the moment you crave it, you sell your freedom for scraps of approval. But flattery is only one leash. The second is far heavier, dependency. They want you dependent on their money, dependent on their approval, dependent on their presence, because the more you need them, the less they need you. And that imbalance of need is the root of power. This is the unwritten contract they hope you'll never read. As long as you need me, I own you. Think about it. How many relationships have you endured because you feared being alone? How many jobs have you clung to because you feared uncertainty? How many times have you swallowed your truth because you feared losing someone's approval? Each time you signed the contract, each time you surrendered sovereignty. The manipulator thrives on your dependency. They will never admit it openly, but their comfort relies on your chains. Because a man who needs nothing is terrifying. He cannot be bribed, cannot be controlled, cannot be owned. That's why Diogenes, the philosopher who lived in poverty, unsettled even Alexander the Great. Alexander could conquer nations, but he could not conquer a man who wanted nothing from him. That is the true freedom of the Machiavellian, the ability to walk alone without fear. But beware, when you begin to change, when you start breaking dependency, When you stop playing the role they wrote for you, they will punish you. They will accuse you of selfishness. They will call you cold, arrogant, heartless. They will say you've changed, as if change were a crime. But what they really mean is you stopped being easy to control. And that's the tax of evolution. If you grow, you will lose the approval of those who only valued you for your weakness. If you rise, you will outgrow those who loved your compliance. Machiavelli would tell you, accept this cost. Better to be feared for your strength than loved for your weakness. But dependency isn't their only weapon. The world has another equally deadly: exhaustion. The system doesn't want you strong, it wants you tired. Because a tired man doesn't resist. A tired man doesn't question. A tired man doesn't rebel. So they will keep you busy, keep you worried, keep you giving until your energy is drained. And then they will praise you for your sacrifice while quietly consuming what's left of you. How many times have you collapsed into bed, drained, thinking, at least they appreciate me? That was the trap closing. They celebrated your exhaustion because it kept you compliant. And compliance is all they wanted from you. Here is the brutal truth. An exhausted man is a controlled man. So guard your energy like a fortress. Protect your time like treasure. Refuse to let anyone drain you with endless demands. Because exhaustion is not noble. It is surrender. And this brings us to one of the most counterintuitive truths of power. Scarcity creates value. The more available you are, the less they value you. The more you give without asking, the more they expect. The more you say yes, the less your yes means. This is not cruelty. It is human nature. We respect what is rare. We desire what is scarce. We value what is difficult to access. But when you're always there, always responding, always giving, you teach them that your presence is cheap. And cheap things are never respected. So you must become scarce. Withdraw your constant availability. Limit your access. Make your presence a privilege, not a commodity. When you do, you will feel the backlash. They will call you selfish, distant, difficult. But endure it, because every insult is proof that they feel the loss of what they once took for granted. Think about your own life. How many times have you agreed when you were exhausted? How many times have you answered calls you didn't want to answer, listened when you wanted silence, given when you had nothing left? And how many times did they truly thank you? Rarely, because you taught them that your time cost nothing, and they believed you. The Machiavellian man, the sovereign man, never lets himself be consumed. He knows that scarcity is power. He knows that boundaries are strength. He knows that when access to him becomes limited, his value rises. So let them rage, let them accuse, let them call you cold. Your absence will teach them what your presence never could, that you were the source of value all along. But scarcity alone is not the final weapon. There is one move more devastating than all the rest. The ability not just to limit access, but to sever it completely. To walk away without fear, without apology, without explanation. That, my friend, is the greatest leverage you will ever possess. There is one move that terrifies manipulators more than any other: your ability to walk away. Your willingness to leave is the most ruthless leverage you will ever hold. Most people stay where they are, disrespected, undervalued, unwanted, because the thought of being alone terrifies them more than humiliation. They will swallow insults, endure neglect, accept betrayal, all to avoid the silence of solitude. And those who see this weakness exploit it endlessly. They know you won't leave, so they never change. They know you'll keep forgiving, so they keep offending. They know you'll keep apologizing, so they keep demanding. But the man who can walk away without hesitation, that man is dangerous. He cannot be bribed with empty words. He cannot be chained with guilt. He cannot be seduced by flattery. He is free because he has trained himself to prefer solitude over submission. Machiavelli understood this principle deeply. He warned rulers that dependency was poison, because the one who cannot stand alone is already defeated. And this truth applies not just to princes and kings, but to you. In business, in politics, in relationships, the one who is willing to leave holds all the cards. Imagine two negotiators. One needs the deal, the other doesn't. Who controls the outcome? Always the one who can walk away. Need is weakness. Freedom is leverage. Now here's the darker twist. Absence is often more powerful than presence. Most people believe power is in showing up, in speaking louder, in proving themselves again and again. But Machiavelli would tell you, sometimes the most devastating move is withdrawal. When you deny people your presence, they feel the void you leave behind. They replay every moment, every word, every silence, wondering what they did wrong. They begin to recognize the value they ignored too late. Your absence haunts them more than your presence ever did. History proves it. Napoleon's exile shook Europe more than many of his victories. When Steve Jobs was forced out of Apple, the company lost direction until his return. When powerful figures step back, their absence echoes louder than their presence. That is the paradox of influence. Sometimes the greatest power lies in retreat, not attack. But here's where most fail. They cannot endure the backlash. The first time they say no, the accusations come. You're selfish. You're arrogant. You've changed. The first time they withdraw, the guilt sets in. The first time they enforce a boundary, the punishment arrives. Anger, silence, rejection, and most people fold. They rush back, they explain, they justify, they apologize. And with every apology, the leash tightens again. You must resist this. You must let them misunderstand you. Let them call you cruel. Let them paint you as the villain, because the alternative is worse, to keep betraying yourself for people who only value you when you're easy to control. Understand this well. Your boundaries will always be painted as cruelty by those who benefited from your lack of them. That's why they will accuse you. That's why they will rage. They are not angry because you harmed them. They are angry because you stopped serving them. And in their world, that is unforgivable. Machiavelli would tell you, better to endure hatred than to surrender power. Love may win loyalty for a time, but fear of loss commands lasting respect. And nothing creates fear like the realization that you can walk away without looking back. So practice this ruthlessly. When you are disrespected, withdraw. When you are taken for granted, disappear. When your boundaries are mocked, enforce them with silence. Do not explain. Do not defend. Do not justify, because explanation invites negotiation, and negotiation weakens resolve. Let your no be final. Let your absence speak for itself, and watch what happens. Even those who despise you will tread carefully. Even those who hate you will hesitate to cross you. Even those who whisper against you will do so with caution. Because you have shown them something rare, that you are not bound by need. You are not addicted to approval. You are not afraid of solitude. That is sovereignty. That is Machiavellian freedom. But let me warn you, this path is not easy. It demands that you sit in silence when everything inside you wants to speak. It requires that you endure loneliness when everything inside you craves validation. It forces you to prioritize your peace over their comfort, your freedom over their approval. And yet, this is the price of power. Think of it like this. The man who cannot leave is already enslaved, even if the chains are invisible. The man who apologizes for his boundaries has already surrendered them. The man who is always present becomes furniture in someone else's life, useful but unnoticed. But the man who can vanish, who can walk away without apology, who can leave behind those who took him for granted, that man commands respect even in his absence. They will talk about him when he is gone. They will wonder what he is thinking. They will regret not valuing him when they had the chance. Some will hate him for it, not because he harmed them, but because he forced them to face their own weakness. And that is the essence of Machiavellian power: to unsettle, to unbalance, to remain unowned, to be the one they cannot predict, cannot guilt, cannot bind. So here is your next challenge. The next time someone crosses your boundary, don't argue, don't defend, don't justify. Withdraw. Watch their panic rise, watch their accusations fly, and refuse to flinch. Because in that moment, you will have become something most people will never be: unmanageable. And when you are unmanageable, you are free. But there is still one final step, one truth that binds all the others together. And without it, everything collapses. That truth is this: power belongs not to the loved, not to the loud, but to the feared and respected. And the man who can combine silence, unpredictability, boundaries, scarcity, and absence becomes unforgettable. We'll close with that truth in the final part. We've walked through silence, unpredictability, selective vulnerability, guilt, flattery, dependence, exhaustion, scarcity, boundaries, and the devastating power of absence. Together, these form not just a philosophy, but a strategy, a way of seeing the world that strips away illusions and exposes raw power dynamics. And here is the final Machiavellian truth: power begins the moment you stop giving yourself away. Think about how much of your life has been ruled by invisible chains: the need to be liked, the fear of rejection, the hunger for praise, the inability to say no, the guilt that makes you explain yourself, the exhaustion that keeps you compliant, the flattery that blinds you, the dependency that enslaves you. Every one of these chains was designed to make you manageable, to make you predictable, to make you harmless, and the world prefers you that way: tamed, exhausted, obedient. But Machiavelli never wrote for the tamed. He wrote for those willing to rule. Not always nations, not always armies, but themselves, their emotions, their choices, their presence. He wrote for those who would rather be feared and respected than loved and forgotten. So here is what you must embrace if you wish to live dangerously free. Silence is control. Your words are valuable only when they are rare. Unpredictability is survival. If they can predict you, they can use you. Projection is power. Let them reveal themselves while you reveal nothing. Selective vulnerability is strategy. Reveal only what binds, never what weakens. Guilt is a leash. Learn to sit with it until it snaps. Flattery is a trap. Accept it without dependency. Dependence is slavery. Need nothing more than your own peace. Exhaustion is control. Protect your energy with ruthless discipline. Scarcity creates value. Make access to you a privilege. Boundaries will be vilified. Let them call you cruel, better feared than exploited. Absence is unforgettable. Sometimes leaving shakes the earth more than staying. Master these, and you will no longer be a pawn in someone else's game. You will not beg for approval. You will not explain your worth. You will not fear solitude. You will stand sovereign, unowned, unmanageable. But here is the price. You will not be universally loved. You will be misunderstood. You will be accused. You will be painted as cruel, cold, heartless. Let them. Because in truth, they are only revealing that they cannot control you anymore. And that loss terrifies them. Do you want love or do you want respect? Do you want comfort or do you want freedom? Do you want to be remembered as agreeable or unforgettable? That is the choice, and it is a choice most people will never make, because it is easier to be liked than feared, easier to say yes than no, easier to collapse under guilt than endure silence, easier to keep giving until nothing remains than to protect your boundaries, easier to live on your knees than to stand alone. But you are not here for easy. You are here because something in you refuses to be owned. You are here because you know, deep down, that comfort is slavery, and only discomfort breeds power. Machiavelli's wisdom was never about cruelty for its own sake. It was about clarity, about survival, about stripping away illusions and seeing human nature without its mask. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You either use it or you are used by it. So here is your final challenge. The next time they demand an explanation, stay silent. The next time they flatter you, smile, but do not depend on it. The next time guilt claws at you, let it burn, and do not move. The next time you are taken for granted, withdraw. And when they finally realize that you can walk away without anger, without apology, without looking back, you will see it in their eyes. Fear, respect, calculation, because they will finally understand what you have known all along. You are not like the others. You cannot be controlled. You cannot be owned. And that is when the world begins to adjust itself around you. That is when people whisper your name with caution. That is when they hesitate before crossing you. That is when you stop being another predictable servant of approval and become something rare, something unforgettable. Machiavelli said, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." But the true Machiavellian knows fear and love are not opposites. Fear creates respect, and respect makes even enemies tread carefully. That is the foundation upon which real influence is built. So embrace silence, embrace unpredictability, guard your energy, refuse dependency, walk away when respect dies, and vanish when needed like a shadow that haunts them forever. Because in a world addicted to validation, desperate for approval, terrified of solitude, the man who can walk away is not just respected, he is revered, he is whispered about as a legend, he is remembered as the one they could never control. Be that man, be that woman, be the one they cannot predict, cannot guilt, cannot bind. Be feared, be respected, be unforgettable. This is the ruthless psychology of power. And if you dare to live it, you will never again play someone else's game. Do you think Machiavelli was right, or was he too ruthless? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And before you go, subscribe to Ruthless Psychology and join a community that uncovers the truths most people are too afraid to face. Because the game of power is not going away. The only question is, will you master it or will it master you? Choose.